Today on Arts 24, she's written and directed 6 feature films, including Maggie's Plan and the Private Lives of Pippa Lee, and a documentary about her Nobel Prize-winning playwright father, Arthur Miller Writer, in 2017. Today, artist, author, writer and director Rebecca Miller talks about her new film, the surreal rom-com She Came to Me, starring Peter Dinklage and Anne Hathaway.
Hello, I'm Rebecca Miller, and I'm the writer and director of the film She Came to Me on France 24.
Rebecca Miller, hello. She Came to Me is a very wacky rom-com. How would you describe it?
You know, to me, romantic comedy comes from like a really beautiful root in American culture. And I do feel it's been maybe a bit debased over time. And I love going back to that root and thinking, how can we create complex, intelligent characters who, where you don't necessarily know how something is going to roll out. You're genuinely surprised. But I'm also interested in, say, the tonality of Billy Wilder, for example, with The Apartment, where things are genuinely sad and things are genuinely funny. So it's really kind of a unpredictable tone as well.
I bet every one of these people has a story for an opera in them, Levi. What do you do?
I operate a tugboat. The wrong hands, this tug is a deadly weapon. I'm addicted to romance.
Isn't everybody?
I've been arrested for stalking. I had to go to rehab. And not supposed to be doing this.
Can't believe that actually happened. I mean, she seduced me, right? She's a witch.
Well, I was reading a bit about your inspiration. Apparently, you're partly inspired by a Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous meeting that you went to with a friend 30 years ago. Talk to us about the idea.
I did go to one of those meetings with a friend, and I was struck by a girl who said, you know, I went on vacation and with my family, and I rented a little extra room, you know, and I thought, what an interesting idea. That was really the beginning of the short story that I wrote. She Came to Me, was the idea that there was this young woman that this man encounters who actually has rented secretly a room to bring men into. Then I started thinking about a character, maybe, and somehow through a long series of mental gymnastics ended up becoming a tugboat captain.
Tell us about your choice of actors as well, and Peter Dinklage, for example.
Well, Peter Dinklage is just one of the greatest actors working today. I mean, he's both very funny, but also very true, emotionally true, has great instincts. We've become friends. You know, he's just a person who's solid and yet understood how to create a character who had so much anxiety. So he's making depression and anxiety sort of also funny, which is, it's not so easy to do. And so I absolutely love his performance. Can't imagine someone else doing it.
Stephen Laudem, how's the new opera coming along?
Good, great,
Yes.
great.
We had discussed seeing a first draft of the score in 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Is that still all right?
I'm suffering from a temporary blockage at the moment. No, turn it back on. G flat. Is he all right?
He had a total breakdown after his last opera.
I can't do this.
Have you ever suffered from writer's block, like the character in the film?
Yes, like Stephen Laudem, I have. My only real writer's block was over 20 years ago. I mean, it was really complete, and it's very frightening. It was as if my mind had been, it's like a refrigerator that's been completely cleaned out. There's not even like a jar of mustard in it.
And how did you fill it up again?
In my case, I volunteered in a women's shelter in Dublin. We were living in Dublin. I was just married. And I volunteered for some months and just worked in the creche with the kids there. And there was something, and I think that the key was that I took my attention away from myself.
Over the years, you've written and directed 6 fictional films. Your first was Angela. It was back in 1995. It was a sensation at the Sundance Film Festival. 3 decades later, we're in this era of superhero films. Have you seen a big change in how hard it is or how easy it is to make indie films?
It's definitely harder to assume that you're going to be in cinemas. That is harder to assume. And I think it's always been somewhat difficult to find backers for original or different work. It's always been somewhat difficult, but it's definitely harder now. But having said that, I've heard that independent cinema is dead so many times over the last 30 years, and it's not, because as long as there are people who are insisting on having their voices heard, insisting on making these stories, we're gonna find a way to put these films out, and there's an audience. I mean, that's the thing, people do like that kind of work. It's just, it is a struggle.
Your career is very inspiring, and you've been a visual artist, an actor, a novelist, a director. You seem to have this freedom to try lots of different things. Where does that risk-taking in you come from?
I think it's kind of a gradual process of like, you know, I started as a painter, I learned that language, you know, and that language led me to start to want to make images move, and I was always interested in telling stories, and so then that worked its way into making short films, and I think I'm just a storyteller really naturally. It's a question of learning the languages, and there's some stories that are better told as novels or short stories, and there's some stories that are better told as films, and part of the knack is just knowing what's what.
But never plays.
No.
Is that because of your dad?
Yeah, I think probably. I really do think, especially in this moment in time, theater is so important because real people sweating and crying on stage for real is so valuable in this moment of like machines taking over. So I believe in it intensely.
Your last film was a documentary.
Yes.
about your dad, Arthur Miller, writer. He died back in 2005. What was making that like for you?
Oh, it was an extraordinary experience. It was really seeing him as a man. Because once I started really looking into his life before I was born, it was almost like I was spying on another person, you know, because of course all our parents, including ourselves, live many lives. I would say everyone should make a documentary about their parents. Like, even if it's like 10 minutes long, it's a process that makes you see them as people, and it's very beautiful.
You're not very often asked about your mum, Inga Morath, who was a photographer. What did she give you?
Well, apart from really a wonderful, being just a very beautiful mother and a very unnarcissistic artist mother, she was a very good visual guide. Like, she would show me photographs or paintings that we would go to exhibitions and talk about how geometry works. You know, how does an image anchor itself and is powerful versus another image which is not powerful? Why is that image powerful? So I absorbed a lot of that, and I really use it a lot in how I think of film, you know, how I compose.
I wanted to talk to you quickly about Greta Gerwig. She was in your film Maggie's Plan.
Yes.
You were a bit of a mentor to her. She's obviously having this fantastic year with Barbie.
Yeah.
What advice did you give her about being a filmmaker?
I don't know that I gave her specific advice. I mean, Greta was already probably on her way. You know, she had already written. I just believed in her, and I think she just watched me, and it was like maybe fun for her to watch, because there I was, you know, but I just can't get enough of her voice.
Maggie's Plan, like all of your work, shows this optimistic view of women during crucial moments in their lives. Are you feeling optimistic for our future, the future of women?
You know, that's such an interesting question. I think it's a deep question and not an easy one to answer. Yes, in the sense that I would rather be a woman now than 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago. So in that sense, I feel like we're going in the right direction, but there's still so much to be done in terms of both our equality in society, violence against women, and also us really taking charge of who are we and how do we want to live, and do we just want to be imitations of men, or is there another way? And I don't know the answer to that, but I think that's the interesting question.
Okay, Rebecca, thank you so much.
Thank you.
My imagination came up with the story. My talent wrote the music. I mean, you don't kill men and eat them, do you?
Well, I haven't yet. You know I can't resist a romantic story, even if I'm not in it.